Andreas Margara, Geteiltes Land, geteiltes Leid. Björn Alpermann, Xinjiang, China und die Uiguren. Chairen Lin, deutsche und chinesische Gaststättennamen. Claudius Torp, Klavierwelten. Jan Schmidt, nach dem Krieg ist vor dem Krieg.
Translational Studies at Heidelberg University, as IBP Secretary in the context of this honorable task of sponsoring the ICAS Book Prize German Language Edition for the second time. I'm really glad to announce the winner of the ICAS Book Prize of the German edition today. Before doing so, let me credit those who have been crucial for the whole process. The 19 books that have been sent to us covered an amazing range of themes and disciplines. And I really want to thank all the publishers, smaller enterprises and larger houses for having nominated very interesting titles. And of course, I also want to thank all the authors for having committed themselves to a dynamic scholarly landscape of Asia books in German language. Moreover, I want to thank those colleagues who were part of the reading committee that carefully studied all entries and made the shortlist, as well as the selection of the winner today. There is Professor Dr. Verena Bleckinger-Thal-Kott, who's Professor of Japanese Politics and Political Economy at the Free University Berlin, the Institute of East Asian Studies. There is Hans-Martin Krämer, Professor for Japanese Studies, History and Society at the Center for Asian and Transcultural Studies here at Heidelberg. And finally, there is Hans Harder, who is Professor for Modern South Asian Languages and Literatures at the South Asia Center here at CATS. But let's finally turn to our winner. He is Associate Professor in Japanese Studies at the KU Leuven in Belgium. His focus is Japan in its political and transcultural relations in a highly entangled global history of the 20th century. He has written on the internationalization of the Japanese book market, on foreign politics, and on Japan's role in global jazz history. One of his key expertise lies in the interwar period and Japan's inner Asian connections and aspirations. Media in this context are key triggers, but also a sensorium for social and societal transformations. And this is where I should now reveal to you the names both of the scholar and his book that won him the German Language Edition Award. It is Jan Schmidt with the book title Nach dem Krieg ist vor dem Krieg, medialisierte Erfahrungen des Ersten Weltkriegs und Nachkriegsdiskurse in Japan 1914 bis 1919. After the War is Before the War, medialized experiences of the war, of the World War I and post-war discourses in Japan, 1914 to 1919. The book has been published by Campus Verlag in Frankfurt in 2021. Let me just read out what the reading committee has outlined in the honor of granting him the winning position. Even if Japan was far removed from the European war theater, the author argues that the modern mass media, through news articles and images, made the World War a global experience and thus shaped local, social, and political perspectives, also in Japan and beyond expert communities. Based on analysis of the representation of World War I in Japanese mass media, newspapers, illustrated magazines, cinema programs, and photography, but also in scholarly journals and books, the author carefully fleshes out the ways in which the war was widely received in Japanese society. Dear Jan Schmidt, in the name of the reading committee of this IBP language edition, and also my colleagues at CATS, I congratulate you to this wonderful award. And I hand over to you. Maybe you want to say a few things about the award and the book, of course, yourself.
Dear members of the ICAS board, dear members of ICAS, and of course, dear Professor Brosius, I'm very, very happy and delighted and honored to receive this book prize for my book, which you can see here. It's a book on Nach dem Krieg ist vor dem Krieg. So post-war is pre-war, medialisierte Erfahrungen des Ersten Weltkriegs und Nachkriegsdiskurse in Japan 1914 bis 1918. So mediatized experiences of the First World War and post-war discourses in Japan 1914 to 1919. It's an extreme delight to have received this news, and I'm very grateful. And thank you for your nice words to introduce me. This book came about basically from earlier research many years ago when I started my master's studies. So my MA, the Magister Atem Studies at Heidelberg University, and in Tokyo at Tokyo Gakuin University and Hitotsubashi University. And actually I realized that for various reasons, which I try to elaborate in this book, that even in Japan, in the highest echelons of Japanese scholarship on Japanese modern and contemporary history, the First World War is somehow a neglected and forgotten war. Of course, there are some aspects of it, let's say the enormous economic impact, but also diplomacy, for instance, the now infamous 21 demands posed to China in 1915, which are rather well known, and also some military aspects. But actually the larger impact on East Asia in the First World War was long under-researched. And this brought me to the idea, after I had an initial look into sources in Japan, to write a more comprehensive book about the more subtle and multifaceted impact of the First World War on Japan in particular. I found out in my research that actually the First World War, among many other things, kicked off and imposed a massive shift in the field of history of ideas on Japan. It changed the worldview, I would say, not only of the elites, but also of many Japanese citizens, which also has to do with mediatization. So with this ever-encroaching media logic that has started to permeate Japanese society, as all modern societies from the late 19th centuries onward. And it actually turned out that the First World War basically helped to open a discursive space to rethink the future. In this case, the post-war future after the First World War, partially liberated in a way from the older towering influence of European and Western ideals, but also simply the realities of the imperial order or imperialistic order of the late 19th, early 20th century. This had many effects, which I try to elaborate in my book. Partially also it supercharged in Japan democratic movements, social movements, but also it helped to funnel Japanese imperialism itself, gave it a new logic. And I tried to lay out in this book how the First World War was discussed, how it was interpreted, but also how it was studied, because it is rather well known that the Japanese military, of course, had a keen interest in interpreting this war and taking its lesson from it, partially creating a fateful self-fulfilling prophecy in this idea that a space to control resources, autarky, had to be established, which is one of the key driving factors later of the Japanese army trying to get its hold of Manchuria, which we all know is one of the many factors that led to the Asia-Pacific War or the Second World War at large. But it's actually not only them. It's not only the military. It's also many ministerial bureaucrats, journalists, scientists who take a keen interest into the impact of the First World War on many aspects of society. They study, of course, mostly the war in the European so-called great powers and their colonies. But the lessons they take are then implemented in many already ongoing discourses, and often connected, and that's my point, to demands. Something that Jörn Leonhardt, whose book is here, the German historian, has called also an over-demanding of basically interwar period societies. And in my point of view, this is actually an important missing link to what in Japan is then famous for the kaizo, for the reform discourse. So again, I hope that my work could contribute a tiny little piece to shed more light on the global history of the Great War, of the First World War, and its multifaceted impact. And I'm again very grateful that I received this honor, and my book received this honor now. And I'm looking forward to participate in the next ICAS conference in Surabaya, Indonesia. And I hope there to present in the panel some of the results of my research, but also some ideas for the future, basically, of my research period, so the 1920s and the 1930s, possibly in a panel of excellent scholars where we can discuss this together. So thank you very much, and I hope to see you all soon in Surabaya, Indonesia.